Hi, this is Kerry Artak with Wicked Stocks, bringing you your Wicked Market Leaders for the week of Monday, August 24th, 2026, where we comb through some of the more popular AI-oriented high-tech stocks, beginning with Microsoft. I take a look at weekly charts throughout. This is more broad-based 3 to 5 week swing trade, 2 to 3, 3 to 5 month near-term investing. But here we have, and this is a repeat from, well, over the last few weeks. About a month ago, we closed above 459.57, this channel top. That still will keep 529.54 in reach as a 2 to 3 month target. Now, I do think in the interim, given what played out last week, the settlement below the low of this high, 491.52, the emphasis this week and into early September is to the downside. And that is to say, I do think over the next 2 or 3 weeks, we can test 459.57, where we could bottom out for the rest of the year, and within 2 or 3 months round up to 529.54, where we can top out through the rest of the year. If we close this week above 491.52, this is probably a 3 to 5 week rally from reaching 529.54. Downside, if things get ugly this week and we close below 459.57, I think we have a good high for the rest of the year. And over the next 2 to 3 months, could take a little longer, we can fall back into this mid to upper 340s as we did last June. Let's move on to Meta. Meta has solid support in the low 500 region, 511.05 to 511.65 to be precise, a rising 4-year channel bottom and a more recent 3 or 4 month horizontal channel bottom. This area, solid bottom picking territory for the rest of the year. From here, we can round up to channel resistance, which I'll show in the moment in the upper 600 area. But if we were to close below 511.05 this week, there's no good reason to be long Meta through the rest of the year. I think over the next 2 to 3 months, we're likely to fall to 384.33, and there could even be more downside. But I don't want to get carried away here. I do think this high from August of 21 is a pretty solid support. I do think within 2 to 3 months of closing below 511.05, and we could bottom out here through the first quarter of 27. Until then, solid bottom picking territory. If you're looking to go long Meta on a long-term basis, part of a portfolio, this is the zone. Now, upside, we do have the high of the low from about a month ago of 611.26, and this is an upward pivot point into September. So, it doesn't look like we're going to see that this week, given what played out last week. But if we did close above 611.26, we've got a good low through September. The following 3 to 5 weeks, then likely to test this 695.11 formation, where we could top out through October, fall away again. If we're looking at a 2 to 3 month time horizon right now for Meta, I'm calling it two-sided between 511.65 support and 695.99 resistance. We could trade inside of this zone quite possibly for the rest of the year. SPCX, this is a wild market, but I'm going to cover it anyway, as I have been for the last month or two. 130.93, you can see we got kind of a double bottom here the last 2 weeks and kind of a double top at the IPO low from June of 149.34. If we close below 130.93, I do think within a few weeks we fall to this 102.19 wave count. You can freeze frame if you want to take a look at the simple math behind that Fibonacci wave count. Ultimately, we could potentially see 73.04, but I see no reason to consider that right now, at least for the next month or two, unless we close below 102.19. Upside, there is... Well, we've got these channel structures, and we pushed through this one last week at 134.99. I will say that if we close above 134.99, and we'll probably open above it actually on Monday, so this area could contain selling pressures for the week. And if we do roll, in other words, if we do open Monday above 134.99, I do think this week, and this is the significant resistance I've been talking about now for the last few weeks, that we could see 160, 149. There's a lot here on the chart, but it is the 160s, the low of the high, the all-time high that was put out in June. But it is this descending channel top that I see as our aggressive upward pivot point into later year. I wouldn't buy SPCX right now if my time horizon was 3 to 5 weeks and beyond, unless we close above this channel top at 160, 149. And that takes into account all the activity since the IPO. If we can close above it, 225.64 likely probably within 3 to 5 weeks, and on to new all-time highs over possibly the same time horizon. If you're looking for an area to sell short SpaceX, this would be the zone as well. The low to upper 160s, we could fall away from here into later year. Let's move on to Alphabet. Alphabet, simple trend line held the lows about a month and a half ago, 329.92. I see this as our support through September, and you can definitely make a strong case that upward momentum remains intact above this simple trend line. I'm going to jump to the next chart to show you that there's the simple trend line at 329.92. We've opened the chart up here. There's a descending channel top that stems back to this May high. So this is a 3-4 month structure. 355.06. We spiked through it 3 weeks ago. If we can close above it for the week itself, above 355.06, that is a good low for the rest of the year. And within probably a month or two, 408.61 likely. And by the end of the year, we could quite easily see that 446.84 longer-term channel top. There's plenty of precedent for that kind of activity with Alphabet. If we close above 355.06, it is go long, stay long, really through the rest of the year. If you want a more fail-safe approach, and there's nothing fail-safe about trading the markets, of course, but the high of the low, 359.68. If you look in that yellow box, the high was 359.68. If we can close above 55.06 and 359.68 this week, that is a go-long strategy through September and really even through the rest of the year. Until then, it is ping-pong right now with Alphabet, buying 329.92, selling 355.06, and if we do, I'll go back to this chart, close below 329.92, I would expect pretty quickly within 2 or 3 weeks this 303.93 formation. And so, there's two ways to see this, and it's difficult for me to lean in one direction aggressively or the other. I like the safer approach, which is to say, I think you can play this as a near-term sell signal, not necessarily a long-term sell signal, all the way down to 245.38. I do think it is ultimately the settlement below this descending channel bottom, 303.93, and dropping, that would then signal within 2 or 3 months or sooner 245.38. Either way you look at it, 245.38 is a base of support that may contain selling well into next year, and we can round up from here. But the question is, are we going to see it? There is a case to be made that if we close below 329.92, yes, within 2 to 3 months we could see 245.38. But the 303.93 formation could play, could definitely capture the selling pressures for more than a week, possibly a month or two, and then we'll just take it from there. So let's go the stair-step approach. If you're going to get short below 329.92, have it be a 3 to 5 week target at 303.93 where profits can be taken. You can even reverse and go long here and round back up. There's just too much going on. You've got this old low here. You've got this consolidation region in here, the base. 303.93 is a respectable descending channel bottom that probably should command your respect in terms of its ability to contain selling for more than a week, possibly a month, and from here we can round up again. Let's move on to Amazon. Amazon tested 3 weeks ago significant longer-term resistance after posting a buy signal above this horizontal channel top that is now at 258.81. And so we've come back and we've retested this channel top. We even closed, we closed for all intents and purposes right at it. We could go either way from here. The question is whether we continue falling south, which I'll get to in a moment, or whether we form a bottom here that could play out through September and we round up again into the 290s. So, if we clearly open Monday above 258.81, it shows stability right out of the gates. And I don't have a problem being long here, bottom picking this area if your time horizon is 1 to 2 months, let's say, because over that time frame we can push back into the upper 290s where we can top out through the rest of the year, possibly well into next. If we do open Monday below 258.81, that shows weakness right out of the gates. I'm not saying we're going to, the market's going to collapse or anything, but I will say that if we close the week below 258.81, that this could be a 3 to 5 week sell-off to meaningful support support at 228.82. 228.82, if tested, say, by the end of September, can absorb selling through the rest of the year, and we can round out of here. This is a big, wide zone in the low 200s. Only if we close below 228.82 would I then anticipate 203.24 within another 3 to 5 weeks. Much longer-term support, able to contain selling through the rest of the year and possibly well into 27. So right now you've got a pivot point at 258.81. If we open above it, we've got stability for the week. And in fact, through September, we could push into the 290s again. But if we do, I'm just going to say close the week below 258.81. It is the upper 220s we're expecting by the end of September. On to Taiwan Semiconductor. So I've got two things here. I've got a trend line off the lows that actually captured selling pressures about 4 weeks ago. And there's also a steeply rising channel bottom at 410 even. And this is a tradable level. It's been containing selling pressures for the last few weeks. And you could also make the case that it even contained the selling pressures 4 weeks ago, albeit the fact that we spiked through it significantly and then the trend line held. So, the way I would sort of frame this is we are bullish through September and into later year above 410 even, expecting upward continuation, which I'll get to in a moment. And we are bearish over the same time frame if we close this week below 387.63. So bullish through the rest of the year above 410, bearish through the rest of the year below 387.63. And if we do close below 387.63, I think within 2 to 3 months, we fall into the very low 280s where we could bottom out through the first quarter of next year and even longer. So let's take a look at the upside. You've got these levels here that I'm going to show as horizontal levels. Actually, no, I'm just going with the trend line here. This is a good framework here for the next couple of weeks. 387.63 is the trend line that if settled below would show the low 280s as I just described. It's also a base of support that you can buy into for the week and even through September. I see a two-sided framework here through the rest of August between 387.63 and 425.80. Now, if we can close above 425.80, we have like a 2 to 3 month rally into the low 500 region. This 507.98 is in reach anyway by the end of the year, holding above 387.63. It's just that if we can close this week above 425.80, we have a meaningful go with buy signal. If you're a 1 to 2 month swing trader, you can buy Taiwan Semiconductor with this weekly settlement above 525.80, expecting this low 500 region within a couple of months. Let's move on to Palantir. Palantir threw off a nice buy signal 3 weeks ago above this channel top at 163.62. There's been a bit of hesitation for the last couple of weeks, but we are still expecting the 207.52 high, all-time high, I should say, over the next couple of months. And as we continue through the rest of the year, over the next 3 to 5 months or so, 244.01 remains in play following the settlement above this descending channel top. Now, you can also play this in stair-step fashion where you're long near term now up to 207.52. Profits can be taken, close above 207.52, and you have another 1 to 2 month rally to 244.01. Downside, if we close below 163.62, that's the rejection of a significant long-term buy signal. Will it then fall out of bed all the way back to 112.93? I think that that's reserved for a settlement then also below 151.16, which is also a significant channel top. But I don't see either of that this week. We've got a new high settlement price following this low. We're clearly above this descending channel, so things look up for Palantir as we move through the rest of the year. Intel, I'm just going to jump to this weekly chart here. We've been bearish for a month and a half following the settlement below the 115.41 channel bottom. This is sellable resistance, and below which the low 170s remain in play over the next month or two. Last week, we fell back to this descending channel top at 87.35. It pretty much held. It could hold again this week, and as long as we open above 87.35 on Monday, this is bottom-picking territory near term only. Over the next week or two, we could find ourselves at 115.41. But that is, I don't want to call it a counter trend move, but it is in contradiction to what I just said in terms of below 115.41, the low 70s remain in play. So there is the possibility that we open Monday below 87.35. And if so, we can this week test the low 70s. 71.08 is a extreme rising channel bottom, but 71.58 is even more significant. I can show that here. That is a former roughly 20-year rising channel top that we've yet to test following its violation in April to the upside. So this is a solid zone to buy into for the rest of the year, and we can round up here back to this long-term wave count A minus, well, I don't show that here. I'm going to jump back to this chart. Yes, A minus B plus A was 139.57, which we tagged, as you recall, back in June. So, let me just jump back to this chart. Low 70s support, aggressive bottom picking territory, not only on a monthly, but really through the rest of the year and possibly well into next, as this is basically that 20-year channel top I just showed. So upside, last thing I want to say is if over the next week, 2 or 3, we close above 115.41, we actually retest that long-term wave count at 139.57 within about 3 to 5 weeks. On to Broadcom, meaningful channel support that spans almost 2 years at 356.70. This is a bottom picking zone that may contain selling through the rest of the year, and we can round up from here. There is a channel that I'm going to show in the next chart, but I'll just kind of draw it out right now. That is our upward pivot point through the rest of the year. Let me just jump there right now, and that is 433.07. So if you're trade Broadcom and you're a 3 to 5 week swing trader, you can certainly bottom pick the mid 350s and sell the low 430s. We could trade inside of this area for the next month or two. Closing above 433.07 does indicate a good low for the balance of the year, and over the following 2 to 3 months, I would expect this rising channel top, which actually contained highs back in June and can continue to contain highs on a monthly, even quarterly basis at 524.08. Overall, if you're kind of in the near-term investment crowd for Broadcom, you can bottom pick 356.70 and hold out over the following 3 to 5 months for the 524.78. And you can see there's plenty of rotational precedent for that. Closing above 433.07 is the clear indication for upward continuation into later year. Downside, if we were to close this week below 356.70, we've got a good high for the year. There is a descending channel bottom that I can show right here. That is, and I'll just kind of draw it out right now, that is at 301.83. That would be kind of a 2 to 3 week target, but I do think overall, if we close below 356.70, we are looking for this December 24, 251.80 high. And in fact, I'm quite sure that channel bottom will, yes, by the end of October, perfect timing, coincide with that anyway. So we'll just keep it simple. Low 250s expected if we close this week below 356.70. On to AMD. AMD's been in a sell signal for over a month now with the settlement below this rising channel bottom that is now 542.53. You also have the high of the low, so it's 528 to 542 is your ceiling of resistance, and below which still anticipating this extreme channel bottom at 393.88, which is essentially the beginning of a wide zone down to 365.19, this former channel top that may well absorb selling through the rest of the year, and from here we can round up to new highs within a matter of 3 to 5 months or so. So that is the downside. Still heavy below 528 even. Now, if we close above 542.53 this week, which doesn't look likely, but we could have a wild week where we do, and if we do, then it's all systems go to the upside. Yes, we'll see this 584.73 high within 1 to 2 weeks, where we could double top for a week perhaps, but I think closing above 528 even to 542.53 is our go with buy signal as we move through the rest of the year. This stock has plenty of precedent for aggressive vertical gains, and I think after all this consolidation, closing above 542.53 within 2 or 3 months, we could find ourselves in the low 700s and climbing aggressively. I think that pretty much rounds it out. I'm going to leave it at that. Please click like, share, subscribe. Check out wickedstocks.com, where we offer a daily SPY, daily Triple Q, daily NVIDIA analysis, 2 individual stock picks a week. So we offer a 2-week free trial, and if you don't like our work, which would be very hard to believe, but if you don't like what you see, within the 2 weeks, you can bail at no cost to you whatsoever. I'm going to leave it at that for this week's Wicked Market Leaders, and you have a great week.